Welcome, and thank you for joining us for an MP Wired for HR Hire to High Performer Master Onboarding and Orientation webinar. I'm Katie Kreider, Marketing Manager here at MP. For those of you joining us on a webinar for the first time, MP combines cutting-edge, user-friendly HCM software with proactive white-glove customer support, recruitment process outsourcing, and HR services that keep your business leaders abreast of the latest HR updates and compliance requirements. I'm thrilled to introduce your presenters for today's webinar, Jen and Andra. Jen is a SHRM certified HR partner at MP. She received her BA from Clark University and previously managed HR for the Northeast Division of a national nonprofit organization. Jen loves building relationships with her clients while helping them meet their HR goals. Andra is an HR partner at MP and provides strategic HR consultation to clients. She has over 10 years of experience in HR. She has a BA in business with a focus in HR from the University of Miami in Florida. She's a SHRM certified HR professional. So just before we get started here today, I did want to go over a couple housekeeping issues. If you would like to submit a question during the program, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the program where they will take your questions and answer them. Thank you, everyone. And now over to Andra.
Thanks, Katie. Just going to start off with a legal disclaimer. This training is intended for educational and informational purposes. While we hope that you will learn a lot today, we are not attorneys and the information should not be construed as legal advice. With that, what we're going to talk about today during this webinar is the difference between orientation and onboarding. We'll clarify the roles of each stage and how they work together to create a seamless experience, how to build a best-in-class onboarding program so you can discover the key elements of an effective program from preboarding to ongoing support. We'll talk about a manager's role in onboarding, optimization for your onboarding process. We'll discuss streamlining paperwork, leveraging technology, and maximizing the value of your program. Then we'll circle back with some key takeaways and a Q&A at the end. So first impressions really do matter. So when it comes to new hires, a strong onboarding and orientation program is essential for setting your employees up for success, boosting engagement, and reducing turnover. We're going to talk about, so orientation versus onboarding, which are two things that often will get confused a little bit. So orientation is the process that introduces new hires to the company, and it typically lasts the first few days or weeks, and it includes paperwork, company policies, and an overview of the organization. And I like to think of it more as sort of like a lot more check the box type items. New hire paperwork, like their I-9s, their setting them up for direct deposit, getting their computer set up, things like that. And onboarding is a more extensive process, and it's aimed at integrating new hires into the company culture, helping them understand their role and providing the support they need to be successful. And so they do often get confused. And while orientation is necessary, onboarding is more comprehensive. And it involves management and other employees and can last up to 12 months. And onboarding is much less of a one-size-fits-all. So we'll be going over different ideas that you can use for your organization, but you know your organization best and what works for you. So feel free to pick and choose and adapt and customize some of our suggestions for your organization. And while training does have a role within onboarding, it doesn't represent the entire scope of the process. But yeah, we'll go through more of these. And we'll talk about why onboarding matters. So a Gallup study actually showed that employees are 2.6 times more likely to be extremely satisfied at work after a great onboarding experience. And the data consistently shows that a positive correlation between engaged employees in a company, there is a positive correlation between engaged employees in a company's profitability, turnover rate, safety record, absenteeism, product quality, customer ratings, and so many things, but sometimes it feels like it's hard to wrap your arms around that when dealing with onboarding is always at the hardest time, right? Because somebody has left the organization and you are trying to fill that role and make up for all of the missing work and productivity. And it's taking twice as long as the person who left sometimes. And so there's so many other reasons that, even when I was thinking through this training, and when Jen and I were talking about this, it feels like it's such a hard thing to wrap your arms around, because it feels like it's everybody's responsibility to do onboarding, but it's nobody's responsibility. And so we'll talk through kind of who should be accountable and how to tackle that, and your regular day-to-day tasks get in the way. And sometimes one of the other barriers to wanting to put in a lot of effort to onboarding is that it could feel like you're putting in so much effort for somebody's onboarding, and then you'll have a new hire who leaves or doesn't make it to 90 days. And it can be really demotivating. But my hope is that your takeaways from today are that, even if an employee leaves, you've set yourself up for success for the next hire, and that you can use some of these suggestions, and because it does matter so much long term. And on the flip side of that, a good onboarding program could lead to high engagement, and it has shown to do that. So a best-in-class onboarding program can lead to high employee engagement. It builds a supportive relationship between new hires and management. It develops a sense of community and connection for the new hire. It reinforces commitment to employees' professional growth, exposure to the organizational values, history, stories, and vision for the future. And then understanding what is expected and what is needed to progress, for the new hire to progress towards their career goals. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Jen to go more into building a best-in-class onboarding program.
Thank you so much, Andra. So first, let's talk about what you can do to engage a new hire and create excitement before their first day of work. And this process is called preboarding, and it's crucial for establishing a positive tone to your onboarding experience and setting up your new hire for success as a high performer. And that time in between the new hire accepting the offer of employment and then actually starting can feel like a lifetime, even if it's just a few weeks. I think, on both sides, right? When you're anxious to fill an open position and get someone in, hoping they'll work out, and they're anxious to find out if they've made the right choice accepting the offer. So I would encourage you to take advantage of this time to make them feel welcome and informed rather than letting them sit in silence, not knowing what to expect. You can do this by sending them an onboarding packet with company information and materials to review, maybe some information about your goals and values, an organizational chart, any relevant benefit information. They could begin to so can begin to look that over. You can also share a glimpse into your company culture by sending any materials, photos, or videos from company events you've had, any outings, company outings, volunteer experiences that you've maybe done together as a group. If there's something that's unique to your company that's an important part of your culture, find a way to share that with the new hire so they can make those connections to what's important to them and feel a sense of belonging from day one. And think about other details that might be helpful to share before day one, like where to park if it isn't obvious, or maybe any security or building procedures if you're in a shared building. Things are going to help make that first day a lot easier for them. And you can include a week one schedule so they know what to expect ahead of time. Maybe a lunch with their manager on day one, or a team get together. And you could also send a welcome basket or company swag before day one. I know 6.5 years ago when I started with MP, it felt really great to get a welcome basket from them and a nice note expressing excitement from the team that I was going to be joining. So little things like that I think can go a long way. And they can all seem like little things, but they really can help make a big difference and help reduce the risk of new hire turnover, which I think is important. And then for day one, make sure you've created a welcoming environment for them that starts with a workplace that's been prepared for the employee. They're whether they're at a desk or cubicle, whatnot, it's been set up for them. Maybe a welcome sign or card from the manager and signed by the manager and the team at their desk. Maybe a a coffee mug with the company logo on there. And then think about opportunities to get that new hires team together for bonding. Maybe plan to have lunch together that week, maybe a Friday group coffee break or a virtual game night to help foster those relationships. And ensure the new hires, computer and any other equipment they need are set up with instructions for how to, create those new accounts and how to log on. If they have a landline, include instructions for setting up the voicemail and provide a company directory. You can also have the manager or a teammate provide a tour of the building and facilities or a virtual tour if that person's remote. And this can also be a great time for introductions as you walk them through the building. Another idea that can be really helpful as they're starting out on day one and week one is implementing a buddy system where a more senior team member guides that new hire through their first few months of onboarding. It can be nice to have another person other than their manager to help them get the lay of the land and provide insight into cultural norms at the company. And just to note that, while a structured schedule for the first few weeks is helpful, make sure you aren't overscheduling new hires with back to back trainings and meetings. You do want to give them some downtime for self study and to absorb what they're learning. And then just a note about remote uh, first like 30, 60, and 90 days. So think about what success should look like for an employee. And it's going to depend on their role, right? What that's going to look like at 30, 60, and 90 days and help build out consistent goals and markers to help them get there. You do want to ensure that those goals are attainable in those timeframes and offer support to help that new hire meet their goals. And you can use these checkpoints to help schedule out required trainings, learning company platforms, policies, and procedures, and help them ramp up in a way that's going to be meaningful and set them up for success. And during this period, take advantage of the greater flexibility that new hire has in their schedule to find time for shadowing employees in their own department, as well as any cross-departmental shadowing opportunities that would help them better understand the business and the work they'll be doing. New hires, I think, especially those who are new to the workforce or your industry, can greatly benefit from shadowing high performers in their role and in roles that they'll be collaborating with too. And whatever goals you set for those checkpoints, you want to make sure the manager is communicating regularly with the new hire and encouraging two-way feedback so they feel comfortable letting their manager know if they're struggling to meet their goals. And the best way to do this is to schedule regularly, weekly or biweekly check-ins. That's just, I think, a best practice in general that we talk about in our Management 101 training. But they're key to developing the employee and manager relationship. Having time through things like the job description and just kind of setting expectations. And then we did want to talk a bit about remote hires because I think it's certainly different things need to be considered when you have folks who are working from their home. And I think the number way we can improve onboarding for remote new hire is to make sure we're being intentional in creating opportunities for connection and learning the company culture. When new hires share a physical office space with their teammates, connections form organically as people are able to connect in the lunchroom or over a cubicle wall. And a lot of the learning can happen just by observing others who have been in the role too, observing those high performers. And remote new hires can easily begin to feel siloed and disconnected from their team and the company as a whole if we don't make efforts to show they belong and that we want to get to know them. Um, and the new hires manager will have to be even more intentional with those weekly or biweekly one on one check in meetings to ensure the employee has the support they need to stay connected. And make sure managers are taking time to connect with employees too, asking about their weekend, how things are going before diving right into those work topics to help build rapport, that isn't happening in the office kitchen. And, think about virtual team building activities. Create opportunities for remote employees to bond with their teams, such as virtual happy hours, online games, and lunch or coffee chats that you can just have over, whatever platform you use for video conferencing. And make sure as much as possible, to include your remote employees in any kind of team building activities and not so they're not feeling left out if there are some teammates who are in office. And we talked about the benefit of shadowing high performers within the employee's department and other departments they'll be working with. And this can, still be done in a remote environment, but it needs to be more intentional. So you can kind of help facilitate this by asking your existing team to keep new remote teammates in mind if they have any projects or meetings that would be appropriate for shadowing virtually. You could also see if it would be appropriate to have that new hire shadow a virtual team meeting with other departments they'll be working with, or possibly having an onboarding buddy in another department to help build connections outside of their immediate team. And consider that remote employees will need a lifeline if they run into issues with technology. There won't be a teammate just a cubicle away to help problem solve or contact IT if their, computer is locked, for example. So make sure you have accessible IT resources that can be contacted by phone or email just in the event that that employee gets locked out. Um, and don't wait too long to send out their laptop and other necessary equipment to account for, shipping delays or damaged equipment. We can't predict everything that could happen, but with advanced planning, you can help avoid hiccups so they will be ready to go on day one. And also think about other technology other than a laptop that might be required for a remote employee to perform their job. Um, and this leads to my next point. You want to make sure you have a remote worker policy that clearly outlines what equipment an employee will be responsible for, like a desk and other home office furnishings. And a remote worker policy should also cover other areas like your core business hours that will need to be available, employee responsibilities for security of company property and data, and notifying the company if they're going to be moving or temporarily working from another state for a period of time. Managers should review this policy with new hires to ensure mutual understanding and give the new hire time to ask any clarifying questions. Can also be helpful to establish guidelines around communication tools, any kind of software or programs you guys use for, inter-team messaging. We use Teams here at MP, email, video calls, talk about what you use for certain things. For example, we use Teams internally versus using Zoom with clients. Make sure you're kind of communicating those things that might not be expressively said but are just kind of part of your communication norms, and also talk about response times to prevent any miscommunication. And you may not have fully remote hires, but a hybrid work environment that would benefit from some of these same considerations. Um, while this kind of flexibility can be seen as a huge incentive, new hires may benefit from more in office time to start as they get to know the company and their teammates. And there can be a benefit to local new hires spending more time working in the office for the first 30 to 90 days, forming those connections and getting the lay of the land before they begin their typical hybrid schedule. If you do decide to go this route, you will, of course, want to make sure you've communicated that expectation with the new hire from the beginning so there will be no surprises. And really, the more communication you can have with remote employees and really new hires in general, the less ambiguity you'll have, which will set them up for success. Um, And I think one of the great things about remote work is it's really helped businesses cast a wider net in terms of talent sourcing to find qualified candidates. But one of the downsides is we don't always think through what comes with hiring an employee in a state where we've never conducted business. And to avoid onboarding hiccups and potentially big issues down the road when it comes time for these employees to do their taxes, you want to make sure they're set up with the correct work location within your payroll platform. So, for HR compliance, tax withholding, and unemployment purposes, employees should be tied to the state where their work is physically being performed, which for a 100% remote employee would be their home state rather than, your physical work location. So you'll need to do some prep work before your remote hires first day to make sure there's a new work location set up on your HCM platform and you're getting those unemployment and tax registrations squared away. You'll want to be aware of any state-specific new hire notices and forms that'll be applicable to your remote employee. Some of which require an acknowledgement, others that just need to be given at the time of hire. This includes things like state-specific withholding forms, earned sick time notices, and family leave notices. And sometimes notice requirements can be met by having a policy in your handbook, but other times you still need to provide employees with a standalone notice that may or may not require a signature or electronic acknowledgement. And you likely have a large all-in-one state and federal labor law poster hanging in the wall of a break room or a common area kitchen that's visible to all of your on-site employees. But it's important to remember that remote employees need access to this information too, both kind of the required federal postings as well as the labor law posters for the state where they're working. And you can send remote employees PDF versions of labor law postings, but it can be really difficult to stay on top of new postings and to make sure current postings are up to date. So I do highly recommend digital labor law poster services like MPs to make this an area of compliance a breeze. And I'll mention that when I talk about optimizing technology. But you also want to make sure you're providing them with a state-specific handbook addendum with any required or best practice policies, and ensure you're educating yourself about any new earned sick time or paid or unpaid leave laws that will now be applicable to your new hire. And you should also check to see if the state where the new hire will be working has any specific training requirements that will need to be met. For example, there's a handful of states that require harassment training if certain criteria is met. And it can be if you just have one employee working in the state, they need to receive harassment training. Really good example is Illinois has an interesting harassment requirement. So they require harassment training for an employee working in the state and training for anyone who regularly interacts with that employee. So, if that employee reports to someone in Massachusetts and they're regularly interacting, that manager in Massachusetts will also need to take the Illinois harassment training. Good things to be aware of. So now I'm going to throw it back to Andrew to talk about a manager's role in onboarding.
Thanks, Jen. So manager is the most critical person to an employee, and even if an HR team or if you're a one-person HR team, you put together a orientation and a best-in-class onboarding program, the manager is primarily responsible for an employee's onboarding experience. So the manager can make the difference between a new hire who's simply adjusted to their role and one that fully engages and thrives. They set the tone. They really need to prioritize onboarding as a major responsibility. Again, even though they might be pulled in a million directions or short-staffed on the rest of their team, picking up a lot of extra work. So it's really hard, but you have to put that time in right at the beginning for a new hire. And so invest time and effort into ensuring new hires feel supported, welcomed, and equipped for success. And even though onboarding it is bigger than one person, right, or department, it's really a collaboration between many people. And so there's the orientation piece of it, there's the manager's role in onboarding, and there's also the manager can know who the buddy could be. And might be well equipped to figure out what that workflow should be for onboarding and training a new employee. In addition, they make a strong first impression. They can provide clarity and set expectations, structure and support for the new hire. They can cultivate relationships, social integration, and networking. And they support the ongoing development and performance of the new hire. In addition, they can monitor progress. And this is one thing that can seem like it's a little bit more difficult to do when an employee is remote, for example. But even when an employee is in the office, the manager is responsible for understanding how they are doing on performance and being flexible to and working well, changing their style to work well with the new hire and figure out how they can best support them and help them move along. And they should be encouraging and asking for feedback, which we'll go into a little bit more. And one thing the manager can do is adjust their onboarding plan as necessary and iterate on it based on the employee's needs. So ask for feedback on the onboarding process. So it's extremely important to, new hires, they bring such a fresh perspective and valuable insights. They also could have come from another organization that did this well. They can identify gaps. And so this can help identify gaps too. And so if you can do this through a survey, or you can do just through meeting with employees one-on-one, to refine your communication, make improvements that could benefit future hires, or help the new hire and get them back on track. And it also shows that the new hire's opinions are valued and trusted by asking them for their opinion and their feedback, because it's kind of a two-way street, that you're going to be giving them feedback on how they're doing in the role and on their job specifically. And you want to get feedback from them on, what you can do to help. So some of the good checkpoints to meet at are 30, 60, and 90 days. And so we have some questions here that can be used for those check-ins. And you can have these meetings during a one-on-one that maybe you have a regularly scheduled one-on-one, but I would encourage you to set up meetings outside of your one-on-one, or having managers set these up outside of one-on-ones, because sometimes your one-on-one can take up, day-to-day things, and putting out fires can take up time. And so if you have a meeting set up specifically to talk about, a 30-day check-in, and you can even provide these questions to the employee before the meeting so that they know what they're coming into, and they can kind of be really thoughtful and think about it. Because sometimes employees aren't thinking about it. They might be like, this is hard, I'm having a hard time with this, but they might not have articulated to themselves even, what they could, what you as a leader could be doing better, for example, or if this is lined up with their expectations. So it gives them a chance to sort of think through that and give some really thoughtful feedback. And MP also does this at 1 year. We also do a check-in at 1 year. And I think that that's extremely beneficial too, because it's kind of, you have some time under your belt, maybe you've gotten through the learning curve, and but you have some thoughtful insight. So if you are in this training and in this webinar and you're thinking, well, I'm not the manager, I'm HR, I can only, do so much, or I'm a office manager and I deal with the orientation, but the managers didn't attend this. Some of the things that you can do is educate and convince managers of the importance of onboarding, because their role is so, you can only do so much. A manager's role is so important. So getting their buy-in and supporting them on what they need can really make a difference for new hires. So train the managers on how to participate, communicate the management expectations. Is it that there will be 30, 60, 90-day check-ins, or what will be needed from them? Hold managers personally accountable to facilitating a best-in-class onboarding process, because they reap the rewards and the benefits of somebody staying long-term as well. And ensure a consistent experience. And so what I mean by this too is we've been talking about feedback and changing things and iterating on an onboarding process for employees. But when say ensuring a consistent experience, what I mean is that sometimes there are certain managers that have been doing it for a long time and they're really good at what they do. And then you have other managers who are, maybe they've never managed new employees before, or they're not used to that. So figure out a way to make sure that all new employees are getting a consistent experience. And so you can buddy a manager that's more junior up with a more seasoned manager even, and learn from them what they're doing in their onboarding for their new hires. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Jen to talk about optimizing your onboarding process.
Thank you, Andrea. So onboarding and orientation, it's a big undertaking for HR, right? Or whoever wears the HR hat at your company. And leveraging technology can really help to streamline the process for you kind of internally, and it can also improve the overall new hire experience. So the first one I like to mention is, with the click of a button, electronic onboarding allows you to send an email to a new hire so they can start to enter in that personal information and then complete any required forms and notices before day one. iSolved always has the most updated version of the W-4 and Form I-9. So it's great. You don't have to worry about this. I've seen it happen before when people have paper-based, new hire packets, and they're using, an I-9 from the 1990s, and they didn't realize that it That form gets updated from time to time, and employees should always be using the most updated version of both the W-4 and the I-9. Um, and then, once new hire completes their portion of the paperwork, it would get sent back to you, and then the person doing onboarding internally, you would then enter, salary information, complete section 2 of the I-9, and any other sections that need to be wrapped up. And it just greatly saves you time from having to key in all that employee's information. Um, and you can also utilize at HCM platforms like iSolve to share and collect electronic acknowledgement of documents like your employee handbook. What I really like about doing this, helping my clients set this up in iSolved, is that we can also add filters. So, for example, only new hires with a work location in Massachusetts will see and acknowledge the Massachusetts paid family and medical leave acknowledgement. Or maybe you have one remote employee in California, and we have a handbook addendum that only that person needs to see. So we can create a filter so only that person will see and acknowledge that addendum. And then you can also create automated, reminders that will just go out to the employee on whatever cadence you like. I usually pick 7 days. That's just what I've gone with. So, an email will be sent out automatically from iSolve to kind of poke that person. Hey, you need to please log into iSolve to, read and acknowledge the updated version of the handbook or the Massachusetts PFML acknowledgement form, whatever it is. And it just takes that off of your plate of having to constantly follow up with someone to get that done. And then you can also run a report easily within that kind of employee message to see who's signed off on the document and who hasn't. So I really like that for helping folks get that done, especially when there are a lot of requirements, or you're in states where a lot of things need to be signed off on. It can just help. And then another way you can optimize your onboarding process, we kind of talked a bit already about the digital labor law poster service, trying to ensure all employees are, have the most up-to-date information. So when we use the digital labor service we use, I love it because it's just an evergreen link. So what I do is I actually build an employee message for my clients, and I put the link right in there, so it's available to all employees, and it's one link. They just click on it and then they select their state, and it will always be up to date and have those correct links. You don't need separate links for different states. Um, and it's kind of like just a nice set and forget type of thing that you can do to just optimize your onboarding. You're not worrying about staying in compliance. It's just always going to be compliant. And you can also use an LMS to offer remote learning modules for new hires so they can kind of complete, their training on their own pace. You can customize course tracks based on employee's position, location, or any, training specific to those with supervisor responsibilities. I was talking about state-specific training requirements, so you can help meet those things. So if you have an employees in California where there's training requirements, or Illinois, like I mentioned before, those are really great ways to kind of capture and kind of assign out those trainings, and then have a record that they've been completed too, right? So that can all be really nice to have, and you can also have transcripts too. And then, as Andrea mentioned, we have a unique opportunity to get feedback on the onboarding process for new hires. So I wanted to share a screenshot of a sample new hire experience survey that we use as part of MP's HR service offering. We help our clients administer a variety of surveys to add a level of anonymity and help with analysis and recommendations for next steps based on the results of those surveys. And why would we bother to conduct a new hire survey? We're measuring effectiveness. New hire surveys provide direct feedback on the onboarding experience, helping you gauge what's working and what's not. They can help improve retention. Understanding, the new hire's perspective can uncover any pain points early on, so you can, address those issues before they lead to disengagement or turnover. And they also can help drive continuous improvement, right? So regularly analyzing survey responses helps refine and improve your onboarding program over time. And when would you want to send a survey to new hires? You can learn different things at different points in time that I just wanted to share. End of week one, if you want to do a survey at that point in time, you can get initial impressions on orientation. How did the welcome experience go? How were your day one activities? Things they might not remember if you were serving them after a year, right? Um, if you wanted to survey them at the end of their first month on the job, that's a great time to assess satisfaction with the job role and clarity, team integration, and early trainings that they've completed. And an end of 90-day training can help you gather feedback on all kind of overall how the experience is going, role alignment, and engagement levels. So just some different ideas for when you could do a survey. I don't think you necessarily have to do one at every one of these points. I think at least 90 days is a good period of time to kind of collect it in this format, as opposed to a sit down with the manager to really go through some of those other questions. And then just some questions that you can include in a survey, of this type of feedback survey. Asking questions about experience with orientation. Was the orientation clear and helpful? Did you feel welcomed and prepared for your first day? Questions around job role and clarity. Do you understand your role and responsibilities? Were expectations clearly communicated to you? Questions around training and support. Was the training you received effective? Did you have access to the resources and support you need? For team integration, can ask, how well have you integrated with your team? Were you introduced to contacts within the organization? And then, definitely ask for general suggestions for improvement. What could we do to improve our onboarding experience? So I think those are all great things to ask, but some other just best practices for new hire surveys, keep it short and simple. You can use a mix of multiple choice, scale based, open ended questions, but try to limit the survey to 10 to 15 minutes. We don't want to take up too much of the new hire's time. And then, if you think new hires will feel uncomfortable providing honest feedback in this type of format, allow for anonymous responses to encourage honesty, and use someone like us at MP to kind of help administer it for you. And make sure you're acting on feedback. One thing we always reiterate when it comes to taking a survey, having asking employees to take a survey, only ask for the feedback if you're going to act on it. You might not be able to act on everything, but it's important to show that you took the responses seriously. And then you can track some metrics too. I think the nice thing about these type of surveys, right? You're going to be able to collect um, information and then see, what are trends in responses, right? Like, are we seeing that, a lot of new hires are having some of the same experiences, or there's some things that we can improve based on this, and I think that's going to be really good. And then we wanted to talk about some final tips for success. So this is kind of the big one, right? Onboarding doesn't end after day one. Andrew had that, that great slide that really broke down the difference between onboarding and orientation. I think a lot of times those terms are kind of used interchangeably or confused, but if you really want to set someone up for success, you want them to be a high performer, you have to put in the time and the effort with them. You can't just maybe have a great first day and then kind of just leave them hanging from there on out and hope it works out. So just remember, it is a process and it's going to take some time. And here are some kind of the top takeaways we hope you'll remember as you walk away after this training. um, remember the importance of, pre-boarding and setting employees up for success before day one. What can you do before they are physically there, or, we're logging on the computer if they're a remote employee for the first time? What can you do in that in-between time, after they've accepted the offer and before their start date? What little things can you do to start to share information with them and make them feel welcome? Um, and managers are critical to onboarding. Andrew mentioned onboarding shouldn't fall only to HR or to whoever wears the HR hat, right? We have to kind of educate managers sometimes on their role and the importance of them kind of working with us as a team for onboarding and bringing their employee along. And then, be thoughtful when planning out your new hires' first day or week. Make sure you're giving them time to process all their learning. I think people can get a little overwhelmed and wonder what they walked into, and they, see they have a schedule that's, slam packed, 9 to 5. It's everything scheduled, and maybe they have just a teeny little time to go get lunch. So allow those times so they do feel like they can socialize and talk with people, over a cup of coffee in the kitchen. Allow for those organic moments to happen. And then, take advantage of your HCM platform. iSolve's resources can help you better streamline your onboarding process and take some of that administrative burden off of your plate. So definitely use the resources that are available to you. And look for opportunities for your new hires to feel connected to the team and the company culture, whether they're working in person or remotely. Think about ways that you can try to foster that. If could be on company time, a team lunch, or if your team would be into doing a game night. We found those have worked really well for us too. And make sure you're asking for feedback on the onboarding process and make changes when it makes sense to do so. And, remember, onboarding isn't over in the first, 30, 60, or 90 days. It's a process that can last up to 12 months. And maybe most importantly is continuously communicate. Successful onboarding requires ongoing support and connection to ensure new hires feel welcome and connected. And investing in a strong onboarding process will pay off with increased employee satisfaction, productivity, and long-term success. So we hope that you gained a lot of good information here. So we wanted to just open it up and see if there were any questions. So I'm just going to check and see if we have anything here.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions. I can jump right in
Great.
to answering one of them. So one of the questions was, what's the difference between mentors and buddies, and which would you use for onboarding? This is a great question. So buddies are usually peers, whereas mentors are, they're typically more senior or experienced. And when it comes to buddies can really help with like day-to-day adjustments and social integration. And mentoring focuses on achieving specific career goals and personal development. So when it comes to onboarding, I'll caveat this, say it depends, right, on your organization. But when it comes to onboarding, I usually would suggest somebody like a buddy. And then as you get to know an employee better, a mentor might be helpful for their long-term career goals and personal development. Great question.
Okay. I'm going to give a shout out. Hi, Hannah. I saw your question about asking about an onboarding. You mentioned an onboarding survey from MP. Where would we find the survey? Well, Hannah, since you use MP's HR services, this is part of HR services. So that's something that your HR partner Meg can help you work on, and she can actually. I can even put a comment out to her. So she can send you a copy of that. But that's something that we do provide to our HR services clients. We help them customize out this survey. So it's something we have and we can share with our current HR clients. And there's another question, will the slides be emailed? Great info here. Thank you, Letitia. I believe, Katie, will you be emailing out the slides at the end
Yep.
of the session?
Yeah, all the slides and the presentation will be sent out this afternoon.
And the recording, right? I just saw another question was asking if there would be a recording too. All right,
Yep, with the
perfect.
recording.
Perfect. All right, I'm just trying to scroll through. We're getting more questions are coming through, so it's great. I just want to trying to make sure I'm staying on top of them. And Andrew, let me know if you see any that you want to answer. Let me see. What HCM platforms do you recommend to facilitate the onboarding process? iSolved. I think you should use iSolved if you're if you're not using us already. A lot of things I talked about were things I'm pulling from my experience working with my clients. We have a lot of folks who use our electronic onboarding, and it's great. The information feeds right into iSolved. We also have learning management systems that integrate with iSolve, which are really I think have a lot of. I can't remember how many trainings we have right now. I think it's probably too many, 100,000 trainings right now on our LMS, but it's nice. You can really get down to customizing trainee tracks for, employees or managers. And like I mentioned, even state specific, you can have a training track for a manager in California versus a manager in Massachusetts. So if you have any questions like about that, definitely reach out to Katie, and I think she could help point you in the right direction. About how you could utilize our services there. Oh, I love this. Someone was sharing us a suggestion for pre-boarding is emailing to everyone a photo and a brief summary of the incoming employee so that everyone can greet the new hire with or without an introduction. I love that, Michelle. And we do something like that too. So I mentioned we use Teams internally, and we have a channel on Teams where we share. It's like a general kind of company kind of posting page. And so whenever we have a new hire at MP, and we're I don't know how many states we're at, but we started off as a Massachusetts-based employee and we just, exploded over the years. And now we have employees all over. So sometimes, you don't see people all the time, but it's great because anytime we have a new hire, we get a picture of that person, we get a little bio, and Nick, our chief inspiration officer, does a really great job of asking questions like, what's your favorite food? What's a fun fact about you? And just this morning, I think we learned that a new hire was invited to, oh my gosh, Andrew, do you remember the whose Oscar party? They said they were, oh, Elton John. A new hire was invited to Elton John's private Oscar party. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a good conversation starter. So
Great.
so yes, we've done that too, kind of sharing that information up, and then making sure that employee is also included on the conversation. So, and it just helps, I think, get conversation started, right? Um, so that was wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm not seeing many other questions.
Okay, yeah.
This was helpful.
Yeah, so thank you for asking questions. Um, someone's asking the name of reports used in iSelf to watch onboarding progress. So the report I was talking about was specifically for the employee messages, like seeing who's signed off on a state on a state specific acknowledgement, like the paid family and medical leave acknowledgement. So it's actually within the employee message. So if you're a current client of ours, Bill, definitely reach out to your account manager, or if you're on HR services, your HR partner can help you as well. It's super easy. Can just do a screen share with you. It's hard for me to describe that without kind of showing you. So, but it's something that we can help you with for sure. Yeah, I think that is, we've pretty much covered the bases unless you see anything else coming in, Andra.
Yeah, I think I see one more question. Let's see. How would you approach getting managers involved in onboarding, and what tasks should they be included in? Great question. So getting managers involved is, I think, a big piece of it is them seeing that you are creating this best-in-class onboarding and you're trying to work on it and getting their feedback on what you can be doing to better support new hires. And so you can get their buy-in that way. And then when it comes to what tasks they should be included in, it really does depend. So you can even be using them to figure out who would be a good buddy for this new hire. And let me see, there's so many ways that they can get involved. They can be also, if you come up with a orientation schedule, for example, of required trainings, whether it be the sexual harassment training, non-discriminatory trainings and things like that, and showing it to them and figuring out how that integrates with what they're planning on working on with the new hire. So you can, because they again will know, I think we went over a little bit, that they'll understand the flow of things and how to best not inundate a new hire. And so kind of teaming up with them on those things.
Yeah, I think that's great too. And I mean, I would add in, Andra, like the manager knows their team, right? Like they might have ideas on, what's worked well when we've had other new people join, and like what's a way we can make that person feel welcome. Like, did we, having a team lunches, or can we just even have like a morning meeting, like a coffee kind of team meeting? I don't know if that department typically does have like a monthly meeting, or can we bump that up to make sure that person is included and we're giving them that opportunity for intros, just things like that too. Like they're going to know stuff going on the team level as well. Great. Well, thank you all so much again for attending and for your thoughtful questions. And we're going to throw it back to Katie.
Thank you, Andra and Jen. You guys are always the best. We appreciate you. So thank you for your time today. To learn more about MPHR services, you can visit our website that I just linked into our chat. Be sure to join us next month on our upcoming webinar, ACA Compliance Made Easy, a virtual event. To register and to see the full calendar of upcoming events and available resources, visit our website. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar along with the presentation slides this afternoon. Thanks for joining us and have a terrific day.